I'm here today with Sarahann for Neuro Pride Ireland videos, who would like to talk to us about dyspraxia and DCD. So Sarahann, thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about this. Would you be able to explain to people what Dyspraxia Dcd is exactly?
Yeah, sure. So Dyspraxia Dcd is a hidden disability, and DCD stands for Developmental Coordination Disorder. So it affects many things, but some of the most, I suppose, common ones are, of course, coordination. And our coordination, I have dyspraxia myself, so our coordination is our coordination tasks are very difficult for us. For example, a lot of young children with dyspraxia won't reach their milestones the same as someone without it. So things, like using a knife and fork, tying your laces, riding a bike, things like that are usually slower and more difficult for us. And anything kind of sport related can be kind of difficult. Things also like organization is difficult for us, organizing our thoughts and organizing tasks, organizing our rooms or our lockers or whatever we're dealing with, and also certain things like school can be quite difficult, like trying to get words from your brain to your mouth or to the paper can sometimes be a bit difficult for some people, and so those are just some of the examples of what dyspraxia is.
And that was an excellent explanation. I'm dyspraxic as well, and I was just nodding along.
Oh, cool.
Do you think there's much knowledge? Do you think there's much knowledge or understanding of dyspraxia in society at large? Do you think people understand it at all?
Not really. I think that there needs to be a lot more awareness about it. A lot of the times when I meant to say to someone like, hey, I have dyspraxia, they kind of look at me confused, and I don't mind explaining it to people, but it's just the fact that you have to do it every time can sometimes be exhausting, especially in like a workplace setting or a school place setting when you have certain needs that need to be fulfilled and people don't necessarily understand them. And that's the kind of sort of sometimes the issue with neurodivergency, is that because you can't see it physically, people just don't necessarily believe that it's there, and that can be really frustrating. So it would be nice to sometimes say to someone, look, this is why I keep falling over, or this is why I'm finding this particular task difficult, because I'm dyspraxic. And it would be just really nice if someone would be like, oh, okay, I get what you mean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard a figure. Now I don't know if this is it was a couple of years ago. I heard this figure that 1 in 20 children in Ireland are dyspraxic. So it's much more prevalent than people are aware. Like that means that every classroom in a school will have a dyspraxic child.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
As you said, there's very little awareness about that.
Yes.
So it's like it's prevalent to something like dyslexia. People are much more aware of dyslexia than they are of dyspraxia.
Yeah.
Do you think, now you spoke about the frustration of people not really understanding, do you think there are many barriers for dyspraxic people?
Barriers, what do you mean by that?
Like, in terms of accessing employment, accessing education or further education?
Definitely. We all know about like the inequalities in our education system. There are far too many, unfortunately, but I think definitely for those who are neurodivergent or have dyspraxia, because school, I found it very difficult personally. I know that I work with a lot of kids with dyspraxia, and they all come to me and they find it so difficult. The education system isn't very based around the neurodivergent brain, in my opinion. So I think that obviously if school is difficult, it's harder to get into college, and then it's harder to get into certain jobs that you want and things like that. And of course, like I said before, the lack of awareness can also make things more difficult, and then people might find it more difficult to work in certain areas. And if we had more understanding, then that would obviously mean that people might be more comfortable to go into certain jobs or find school easier, find college easier, and things like that.
Exactly. What things have helped you personally? Like what adaptations or therapies or anything like that?
Yeah, there's been a lot. I had occupational therapy growing up, which really helped. It helped me learn how to finally tie my laces. I was like 12 years old when I learned, and I'm still really bad at it, and I'm still tying them all the time because they always fall apart. But I learned how to do it, and the therapist helped me with like gross motor skills and catching and throwing a ball, things like I still can't kick a ball, but I don't really want to. But I'm sure if you go to occupational therapy, they can help you learn skills like that. And they also, I went to an occupational therapist that helped me manage my emotions, because obviously it can be kind of difficult. Like I said, organizing our thoughts is difficult, and sometimes we feel a lot of emotions, especially young children. So I went to an occupational therapist that helped me to kind of regulate them and understand what I was feeling. In terms of school, things like having movement breaks really helps. With college as well, I take movement breaks. I'm very lucky to go to a college that is very sensory aware. So they have like pods, like sensory pods, and those really help. Organizing your locker in senses like putting all my books into one folder, so that when I do go to the locker, I just grab one folder and everything's in there, and I don't have to, like, you know, do stuff like that. I did end up having to get a reduced timetable because I was so exhausted from school. I was coming home and passing out and getting ill, so that kind of helps. But I suppose, and in my everyday life, I think as well, what really helps is just being aware of it. Like for me, I wasn't diagnosed until I was like 11. I was in 6th class and I was diagnosed, and then like my life completely changed in a great way because I was able to like know why I was the way I was. I used to think that I was cursed, and like I just had such bad luck because I was always the kid that would spill her drink. I was always the kid that was falling over with cuts and bruises. I was always the messy one. I was always the one that struggled with tasks, etc. And then even just being aware of it now, it's like it helps my self-esteem, because I'm like, I know that this is something I need to work on, and that it's not like necessarily my fault in a lot of ways, which is great. And I suppose every person with dyspraxia though is an individual, and I'm sure you know yourself, Gillian, that we all have different things that help us.
Yeah.
So it's always great to find, and if you're working with someone with dyspraxia, find their individual needs, because it can be different for other people. So it's super important that we all kind of know our own thing. Yeah. So
Excellent. You kind of answered this because the next question is kind of around the supports. What supports do you think that dyspraxic people will benefit from the most? And I know you mentioned OT. Is there anything else that you could think of?
I think definitely in schools, more supports, because I felt like a lot of the times I was kind of fighting for what I needed, because the lack of understanding, and you know, they saw me come into school and I was smiling, so I was fine, but in reality I was having panic attacks at home, I was getting sick, I was overwhelmed, you know. And I think that if someone is in education, and there's some amazing lovely teachers, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all schools are bad, no, not at all, but if you are working in school, it's, I suppose, like to try and work with the child. And I know it can be hard because sometimes you want to give the child something and like you just don't have the resources, but I guess like that, more resources would be great. Yeah, I think definitely things could improve in schools, probably would be the big one, I'd say.
Definitely. What's the one thing, is there one thing that if you could only tell people one thing about being dyspraxic, speaking and not being able to get words, it's the one thing that you like to tell people that they take away?
Probably if you are dyspraxic, that I know sometimes it can feel super frustrating, but what I always say is, and what I've noticed from working with people with dyspraxia, is that we're really good at what we love to do. And like the thing is, sometimes things might be a little bit more difficult for us. Like, for example, I'm a musician, and obviously coordination is a problem for me, but that meant I had to work that little bit harder. So I think now that has made me really good at what I do, because I have to put so much passion into it. And I think once you find what you love, you'll thrive, because I've just seen it with so many different people. And so not to be, I suppose, too down on yourself. And then of course, if you don't have dyspraxia, I guess I say to you just to be mindful, and to, if you don't know what it is, try and research as much as you can and be aware of it, so that you can sort of help others around you, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. So obviously this is for Neuro Pride, and is that something that's important to you? Is it important to you to be proud of being dyspraxic? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think I wouldn't be who I am without it. I'm very creative because of it. I'm not a very sit still type of person. And so that makes you kind of happy in a lot of ways. Sometimes I cry and I feel like, oh my God, why? This is so frustrating. But at the end of the day, yeah, it is who I am, and I just think the neurodivergent community in general are the most talented, creative people. So I just love to sort of, as a community, be proud of like who we are. I think that's really good.
Excellent. I suppose, and now I'm going off script because this is just a question I want to know the answer to. Over recent years, there's been an autistic community has really gone up online, and on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. There's a lot of kind of autistic, there is an autistic and an ADHD Twitter and Facebook kind of community. Is that something that you'd like to see for the dyspraxic community, like that sort of online community?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Or
I
does
mean,
it,
I do work with Dyspraxia Dcd Ireland, and they do have accounts. So if anyone wants to check them out, also you can ring them if you have any concerns, if you think you might be dyspraxic or you need any sort of supports. I know actually my mom, she works with them, and she offers therapy for neurodivergent people. So if you want to check that out. But also, yeah, they do stuff, and it's really great. I think what we need more is maybe more like people to get involved with it, and more it to become more like we do have Dyspraxia Awareness Week and everything, and I think maybe like if we could get more allies involved, then it would kind of become something like the autistic community has, or the ADHD thing, you know what I mean? Because Dyspraxia Ireland are definitely really great at pushing it and doing all the great events that we have. So yeah, I think just getting the community involved, and the more, I think, like I've said so many times, awareness is key. And I think once we get awareness, then we can build up and have something like you were talking about.
Yeah. Is it easy? And this is no slight Dyspraxia DCD Ireland, they do great work. But is it easy as a dyspraxic adult to find other people? Is that community easy to access for people? Do you think?
I believe so. I think they have a young adult group, and they do activities together. Obviously COVID stopped everything, screw COVID. But I think they have that. There could definitely be more, and I mean, there always could be more, and obviously funding can be an issue sometimes. But I think, yeah, as well, if you ring Dyspraxia Ireland, they can link you up with people like myself or other people that I work with, and if you need someone to talk to about it or anything like that, definitely. I think it's just that people don't know about it. I think is the biggest issue, is that it's just people need, like I keep saying,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm obviously I'm a good bit older than you, and I have to be honest, it wasn't a known about thing. It wasn't like I would have been like all my mom, my aunts and uncles would have said, you were such a clumsy child, and it was called clumsy child syndrome. But they didn't make any connection with the fact that I struggled with the things that I did. It was just like, oh, there she goes, walking into tables and doors and stuff like that all the time. I still can't tie my shoelaces and stuff like that, but nobody ever had anything to do with it. So that perhaps may be why there isn't a sort of older dyspraxic community, because it wasn't a diagnosis really here. It wasn't known about things. So yeah,
that's so true.
Maybe
I mean,
people,
yeah, it's just like, if awareness is kind of bad now, but before, like the generation before me, like I can't imagine how hard it must have been, like, because we're getting somewhere now, and we're starting, like, of course you guys are even having me here, we're starting like a lot of awareness. We have Dyspraxia Dcd Ireland and everything, but I can't imagine how it must have felt because of growing up to kind of just be told that you're stupid, or that it's, I know that, like my mom I spoke about earlier, she only got diagnosed recently. I'm not going to say her age, but she's my mom, so she's older, and she went back to college to study psychotherapy. And then she went and got diagnosed, and she went her whole life thinking that she was stupid and was called stupid. And only now is she now realizing and discovering herself, which is insane to me. And I do feel very lucky that I have what I have now. You know what I mean?
That's like that kind of, that access to self-awareness, like you said, it kind of does. You stop internalizing everything and thinking, especially when you drop something, or like you're constantly dropping things, or you're constantly walking into things, and you're like, what you have no idea why am I doing this all the time? And you can be a bit self-compassion. You can give yourself a bit of compassion, and when you know the why of something, you can actually be like, oh, this isn't my fault, this is just the way I'm made up. So yeah, I think that's an important message for people to understand as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I haven't asked you about?
Not particularly, other than just like I was saying before about being proud of being dyspraxic, and obviously do contact Dyspraxia Dcd Ireland. Oh, and you can check out my Instagram. It's just Sarahann Mooney. I have poetry on there, and I write a lot of poetry about being dyspraxic. So if you want to check that out, you can do that also, because I like writing about being dyspraxic. So I think that would be nice. Yeah, I think that's everything.
If you'd like, if you send on your handle to us, we can put it in the comments underneath the video. Would that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, no problem at all. No problem. Well, Sarahann, thank you so much. Really, thank you so much for giving us your time and talking to us about it, dyspraxia today. I really enjoyed it because I was, you know, I have a vested interest, I suppose. But yeah, I really appreciate you talking to us today. Thanks a million.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice to talk to somebody who also has dyspraxia as well. So I really appreciate it.
Okay, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Bye-bye.